Hey everybody, Scott Snofke here, Senior Direct Marketing Coach with REIPrintMail. I got another episode of REISmartTalk. Today we're talking probate. I got the head of probate engineers here. He knows probate start to finish. I've learned so much from this guy. I wanted to bring him on to introduce you to start to finish on probates and where to find the best coaches in the industry, or the best coach is Andrew Becker that I know of. It's going to teach you how to close a probate deal. What are the potholes that we might come across? Where are the sticking points with the particular deal? How long it typically takes to close, ins and outs of probate. I got the best of the business on today. So as we get started, Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good, dude. Good to see you again, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here and to hopefully share some value here for your listeners.
Yeah, it's one of those, the first time I heard you talk, I jumped into one of your sessions and man, it can get a little overwhelming, all of the information that you typically need to know. And one of the things I kind of took out of that is like, once you get that first lead or, inbound, if you're using direct mail, where that lead comes from is, you started to build rapport with that client. How do you typically do that?
I think the first thing that we teach is bring value. So short of even the property discussion, because obviously like you send them direct mail, you reach out to them because of the property aspect, is kind of forget about that, Scott. These people, and I always attribute it to this. So your listeners and you and me, we always market ourselves as the people that can sell your home fast, right? Or for the most amount of money, depending on your exit strategy. And there's an entire education and cycle around just the property aspect of it, right? And they trust you because more often than not, Scott, as you know, some people never buy or sell a home. Maybe they do it once or twice. So they're like, man, it's like going to court. You get a lawyer to represent you. When you sell your home, regardless of if it's off market or on market, you get a real estate professional. So for the probate aspect of it, there is that element of the property most of the time, right? But then there's this additional element of all the estate stuff that needs to happen, from legal to heirs and beneficiaries to creditors to accounting, all this stuff that encompasses probate. And that's the value that I'm teaching people to bring, instead of just saying, hey, I can buy your house, Scott. Hey, I can buy your house. We teach people how to not compete, but separate, because you're going to talk about all the additional elements that sit on top of the property itself.
Right, because most people think that, that person passed away, that all of the other stuff went away with it, but it doesn't. It sits back there and waits for the probate court. So there's creditors that need to be settled with. There's, variations of who's the parishioner and who's in the will, and all of that stuff that goes on along behind the scenes that, a lot of people just don't understand, that, we think that end of life, end of problems. And that's kind of the start of this is the solution. And so what you're saying is you lean in and say, hey, we're here, with this, say, a list of things that, you need to pay attention to. I've built this list over a long period of time of doing these deals, and I have a lot of knowledge. So you're just leaning into them as a source of, for information.
Exactly, Scott. So it is probate. So the outreach is a little bit different than, say, like an expired or FSBO or pre-foreclosure or something like that. So there's that level of, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And I like to, obviously to each his own here, but I like to kind of address the elephant in the room, that that they are in this situation, and say, hey, we know you're going through an estate sale for the Jackson family or the Smith family, whoever it is, and you're going through probate. I actually deal with this a lot. This is one of my specialties. And you're not even bringing up the property at this point, Scott. You're saying, hey, I just want to be a helpful resource. Whether we do anything together or not, I would love to send you A, B, and C. And most often they're like, yeah, send it over. And what that is, it's like, Scott, have you ever gone through a probate before? Well, no, I haven't. I know I have so much to figure out. Well, what if I sent you a checklist of, here are the top things you need to know, or here's an outline for a probate binder that you can start to put together, because there are going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving people that you need to know of and be able to have everything nice and organized. Would that be helpful? And then you send them this checklist and they're like, wow. And the idea of not competing but separating is 9 out of 10 people will call and say, I can buy your house. I can buy your house. I can buy your house. But Scott's going to be the one that says, hey, I know you're going through probate. Let me help you with that aspect of it. And then when they do make a decision on the property, whether they buy it, keep it, sell it, whatever they're doing with it, they're going to say, hey, Scott was the only person that actually talked the language of probate. He was using words that nobody else even brought up. And that's how you separate yourself.
Right. Like you almost want, I think that's the first thing that I picked up out of there. Is like, I almost want a dictionary or a summary sheet of all of the keywords of things that I don't know the definition of. Yeah. And that's a great way to build, that know, like, and trust. So as you build that rapport with a potential seller, you're there to support them. And, you take that supporting role like, hey, I'm just here to help, when and if. And then as you build that, be like, hey, what's that next step? As you start to bring in that solution of potentially selling the property, how do you soft entry, is that a soft entry, or do you just kind of go, hey, on the backside of this, I can just buy this? How do you enter?
Well, it's also about the branding too. So when you're sending them this information, it'll say like Andrew, real estate investor, something like that. And then you just ultimately you wind up talking to them about where they lay in the timeline and the process of probate. And then you start to just ask them. You don't never bring it up. But at some point you say, well, I know there's a property at 10 Main Street. Any idea what you would like to do with that? And they're like, well, because in probate, Scott, you have to remember you just said like, you pass away and your problems go away with you. I would also expand on that says, well, somebody else inherits those and there's a legal process.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, the probate process of a legal thing that the PR, the personal representative, the person in charge of overseeing this has to go through. So they have to be guided just like, again, you would guide them through just the property part. So you're asking them along the way, like, where are you? Did you file this paperwork? Do you have an attorney? Oh, let me bring in an attorney. Oh, by the way, what are you thinking about 10 Main Street? And they're like, well, there's a lot of debt on here. We actually have to liquidate it or sell it to be able to pay off the debts. And then they keep what's left over. And then you're like, well, here's some options. And the best option is what I like to describe as like the hybrid model. So I could say, hey, Scott, you know what? I actually buy homes in this area too. I could purchase this from you directly for X. Or I actually have a brokerage team and we can renovate your property and list it on the back end and you pay after it's, all sold and said and done. And then kind of anywhere in between, depending on their timeline and how quickly they need to liquidate it or not. So internally, being able to give them A to Z in terms of options is killer. And that's another tremendous value add because they're not only getting that from you, but you're also helping them with the paperwork. And you're getting them an attorney and you're having the house cleared out for them. And oh, by the way, Scott, they're in California and the property's in Virginia. So you're handling all this as boots on the ground. So that's the level of value. And there's a whole lot more to that. But That's how you really start to stand out. But you naturally just ask them, what's the plan with 10 Main Street? Have you given that any thought yet? And they know who you are by that point.
Yeah, so you start, you basically started with the soft entry point of, hey, I'm here to help. Here's some resources and, giving them that ability to, know that there's a solution there and in building that trust. And then you kind of soft roll into, well, let's talk about as we're building trust, let's talk about these assets that you have. Right. What are your intentions here? And then you kind of let it on them, to say what the problem is with that. Where's the pain? And then at that point, now you're at the solutions, level of, hey, we have multiple solutions for this. We go through this all of the time. Yeah. And, you start to build trust in that solution because you've already established trust by giving them, the stuff on the front, the checklist and the verbiage and, the knowledge. You gave that away at the beginning. And then now at the backside of it, you've already built trust and rapport. So now they're just naturally going to follow your solution. So you're going to be able to set them up with multiple solutions, give them the knowledge to make a decision what best fits their family. Yeah. So go a little bit deeper into, once you get into, the process, what are some of the hiccups that you typically see, or what are some of the things that we need to watch out for that can typically crush a deal or set us up for failure as an investor?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is you want to control the variables or everything that can and will take place in the estate process. So I am on the I have my investor hat on if I want to take down the property myself. I'll give you scenario A and scenario B, Scott. Scenario A, I'm like, hey Scott, I can buy 10 Main Street. I'll buy it for $250, close in 2 weeks. And you're like, cool, I'll sell it to you for $250. And I don't bring up anything else outside of it. Now I'm relying on you, Scott, to be in that, okay, I'm going to educate myself and do this the right way to avoid any delays or massive hiccups. Meaning, do you even have legal authority, Scott, to make that decision? I don't know. I'm just trusting you as an investor. You told me you could sell the house. So yeah, I'm gonna buy it from you. Are you filing the right paperwork through the court process to get that legal authority to be the decision maker, the legal decision maker? If not, I might think as an investor that you're the right person to be talking to, when in reality, it's a contested will and you think you have authority, but so does your brother. And now it's this huge thing. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to sign this and make 25K and I'm going to do this and do that. When in reality, I'm just like hoping and praying that it closes based on what you're telling me. And what you're telling me, because you don't really know how it works, is incorrect. And that's not your fault, right? Just like someone doesn't really know how to sell a home, they hire someone and they get taught. That's where scenario B comes into play. So I would be able to ask you pre-questions to scenarios to make sure you're the right person I should be talking to. And in reality, as I'm gathering the data on the probate file, I would already know where to look to know that, Scott, you're actually not the PR. It's your brother, Ryan, and I need to be talking to him. So that's first and foremost, like talk to the right person. And I teach people how to find that data to know who they're talking to. In addition, I'm trying to figure out where you're on the timeline, right? There's a pretty standard timeline across the United States, Scott. Although it is county by county and whatever state you're in, they kind of have their own nuances. I generally know what happens. There's a petition for probate that opens the file. You get awarded or named either an executor if there's a will and you're named in it, or an administrator if you're not, and you say, hey judge, I should be the one here. And then you're given letters testamentary if you're the executor, letters of administration if you're the administrator. That gives you the legal authority. Then you have to start collecting names and info for heirs and beneficiaries. You start making inventory of the assets, the debts. You notify all the creditors. You liquidate if needed. You get rid of all the debts. Ultimately, it comes to the final, here's everything left over that gets distributed. There's a final accounting that has to be done to close out the file. If you don't know any of that in scenario A, you're just like, man, I'm going to close this deal and it's going to be awesome. Scenario B, though, I know enough to say, hey, Scott, it looks like your brother, Ryan, is actually the PR. Again, I would know this before talking to you in that level of detail, but I'd be talking to Ryan and say, hey, Ryan, do you have your letters testamentary? I see there's a will and you were named the executor in the will. Yes, I have it. Okay. So you're on the right path already. Do you happen to be working with an attorney, or are you filing those documents on your own? Oh, I'm doing it on my own. It's really hard. I got to figure out what to do next. Well, what if I brought in a probate expert attorney who will work for free on your behalf, and he or she will get paid on the back end once it closes? But that's the difference between weeks and a couple months to many months or years of the probate actually happening. And then that probate attorney should be well established enough to say, hey, there actually needs to be 3 probates on this, because this person passed away without a will, then that person actually passed away, then this person passed away. So you can see how kind of like, it's not just straightforward. It's not like one person passes away and that's it. It could be quite cumbersome and chaotic. But if you know enough to look for that stuff in the education part, that's, again, dude, how you separate yourself from just the person in scenario A that's like, hey, Scott, is this closing soon? Like, we're supposed to close tomorrow. Is everything cool? And then you go ghost because you're like, dude, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it's just that the education part is so important to understand when things are on track, and most importantly, when they're not. And then you bring in the right person or people to get them back on track.
Well, and it's such a value add to the potential seller or the family, because let's say, it's not necessarily preying on them because they're in distress. It's being there as a helping hand, to say, hey, these are the things that you are going to go through. I do them all of the time. and make sure that you're on the path. These are some of the potholes. It's like walking out the door and holding the door for the next person. You've already been through the door. You know what's on the outside. You're there to say, hey, this is the weather out here. And in doing that, you're helping them through the path by already having, the checklist kind of already mapped out. And one, it helps you because if you have the knowledge and have that stuff mapped out, you're going to be able to guide them and be more efficient, waste a lot less time, and be able to point them towards where they're going to find the most success. So, it's one that, I look back on. Anytime I hear probate, I think of my mom and my mom's mom. When my mom's mom passed away, she had 17 children. And
wow,
it took 14 years to get it through probate because, who was it left to? She kind of left it to the whole family. Well, then now you got to get all of these people that agree to it. Well, then, there's a core group of kids that were kind of maintaining the property. It was kind of a vacation area, built in a lake community, but they were doing it, but they didn't know how to do it. So they had no guidance. They could have gotten it done 15 years or 14 years ago prior and done it pretty quickly, but none of them could agree on it. And most of them didn't want it because they could have signed off. But then it took one of us cousins to step in and say, okay, we want the property. Let me take control. I know probate. Get the right people involved, walk through, get everybody to sign, who's in, who's out, and sign it over. And it was a year and a half from the point that he took over to get it all done, and in multiple family meetings and Zoom calls. And, and it was almost political as far as, if I'll do it, if they do it. And, there's so many family entities. So, you don't want to just go into a probate and think you have it figured out like it's a regular old lead or a regular old deal. You want to know that backside of it so you can lean into the potential seller with a lot of knowledge and create that ease and convenience that most people are missing.
Exactly. And the most important part, Scott, for your time and interest, you want to make sure, like in that's an extreme case of, 14 years and 17 people. But also from the state's perspective, it's like, well, there's a legal way to do this so no one can come back on the back end and contest it later on down the road by following the letter of the law in whatever county or state that they're in. So you're protecting that asset too. The worst thing in the world would be if you help them through the probate the wrong way, acquired the property, put, $250K in renovations, went to go sell it, and then it wasn't done properly. So the random sister that no one talked about came and said, hey, wait a second, what the heck is going on here? And then there's a judgment to freeze the property, and then you're in a really, really bad position. So don't get that way, right? Like do it. You want to do it the right way, just like you would do a normal house. You do a title and you have an attorney oversee it and you make sure it's going to get transferred the right way. It's the same concept, just at a much higher scale. But the key and the awesome part about this, Scott, is 99% of investors and real estate professionals out there will not go that extra 1% to dial in and educate themselves. They just, I'll buy your property. And that's the specialty, the niche where like there's an opportunity for those listening out there where if you really go deep and become a specialist and an expert, there's a tremendous opportunity regardless of your exit strategy today.
Right. And, as we have this conversation about probates and how in depth it can be, if you guys are out there looking for, a masterclass on this, or you want to learn a little bit more about it, you think you're pretty good at it, but you want to fine tune a little bit, definitely catch up with Andrew Becker at Probate Engineers. The first time I sat down, I thought I had a grasp on it with going through our family. And then I was like, wow, I am way behind. So he enlightened me on several different things. One last thing I do want to talk about is, the specialty. How do we find them? It's like, where do we find these probate leads? Because I know I pull data sets all the time, but I know that's a little delayed, by the time they come out in the county courts and that. And usually it's speed to lead is the uniqueness of probate is finding them right away, getting in front of them as they're getting into this situation to introduce them. I know you use direct mail with us. We have some really cool templates that we've built together, but, there's still other ways to create lead generation. How do you typically do it?
Yeah. So here's one thing. If anyone listening right now takes away one thing, stop buying probate data from a list provider. It's stale, it's old, and everyone gets it at the same time. If you really want to be an optimized probate lead gen machine here and have this on autopilot, go to your courthouse and figure out how to pull it yourself. That is the source of truth, the source of record, where a probate gets created and lives, and it's public information. So if you go Google right now, probates in blank county, wherever you are in America, there's over about 3,200 counties in the US. Right. They all do it different.
Yeah.
Figure it out and do not give up. I'll tell you this. So I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, like right outside of Washington, DC. We went into DC courthouse and said, hey, I'm Andrew, I'm looking to get this. And we got hit with what's probate? You can't get that information. Do you have a name? Do you have a case file? And we were like, oh man, this is going to be tough. And then we did not let down and we didn't give up and we just kept going. We would call, go in separate times. And eventually we got someone that was willing to help, but they play aloof a little bit. They play coy and they don't, for whatever reason, they do a great job of all the counties across America kind of have this standardized playbook of saying, oh, you need to give us information if you want that file. But that's not really the case. So right. You don't give up, you stay persistent and you figure it out for as long as it takes. Scott, I always tell people like everything else that the probate engineers teaches you after the main getting it yourself doesn't matter if you can't solve that how do I get it myself action item first. And then you'll figure out DC is in person only. That comes out on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. You have to wait in line on 2nd Street and go to the 2nd floor in this office. And there's a bank of computers. You have to sit on the, out of all the 12, only one of them works and it's the right corner one. You have to do this and do that. Or Arlington County, they have an online portal. I got lucky. I pay $400 or $500 a year. So I log in, I made a playbook. I ran through how to go find them and how to do a date range. And you come up with like this week's probates. There's 15 of them. You click into it. There's a million files. Well, which file? File A and file Z have the information that you need. And then we playbook that out. So then now a VA is doing that for us. But that doesn't matter. Like all the value stuff, all the direct mail that we do, that wouldn't matter if I'm buying this list from somebody else. I want to control all the controllables, all the variables. So I know I'm getting the list the way I need it and quickly. That speed delete is super important before your message just gets, tossed into with everybody else's when they get the data.
Right. And I have that conversation with a lot of people. And it was I think it was somebody in the back of your class one day. And I say the back of the class, it was Zoom. So it popped up. I heard it come through. But, I did hear the statement, a $20 bill on the back of a business card does pretty well. Yeah. I don't know who said it. I don't remember exactly where it came from. But, it's one of those that, if you know how to get in there, that it's accessible, that we got to find it. You just have to figure out the puzzle piece to get it into your hands. And every county is different. So you can't go through and map for everybody, but you can go through and like you just explained how you do it, which is a great technique to get into, your students and everybody's going to have different solutions because they're all in different counties. So you get into the network of probates is I highly recommend. And as we own a data company and I can get in there, I'll tell you firsthand, it's stale. It's one that even if you go to, our shipwreck data and our, or our friends over at Data Syndicate who get it really good and will bring it to you. Let's look at the timeline of it. It happened, at a date, let's say it started today. That it was put in there. Well, then, by the end of the week, Data Syndicate, boots on the ground, maybe not, or our shipwreck. Well, then it gets into that system a week later. Well, then by the time you go to pull it and then you go to get mail to it and it's out the door, we've lost 3 weeks. Yep. It's one that you almost want to have, something local and small to get it out the door fast, and then your follow-up was done on a bigger scale. But the very first one, maybe a priority express mail was like, hey, I know you're going through this introductory, something high-end. It might cost you $2.50 per piece, but you go high-end with that very important message, like, hey, these are the things I come across, and you send them the packet, or the email links, or message me and I will get you all of this stuff, however you do it. But it is most important to get it at the freshest, at the tributary, of it, you're going to find more success there. Now, the follow-up game, you can use other data sets. You can find that broader brush of the ones that are still sitting in probate after months or years, and still target those and be like, hey, but that message might be a little bit different, not as fresh. Be like, hey, this is still sitting here. What's going on with this? Happy to help. I do this all the time. It might be a different entry point at that point. But, that lead generation from the courthouse, and that goes with other, there's other data sets out there too, besides just probate, that you can accrue from the local courts, evictions and lis pendants and all of that. If you get them fresh there, you're already there. Go get the other ones too, and apply mail to those, or, whatever other preference. Handwritten fonts are great, to get to those very quickly. All of those are about speed to lead.
Yeah, it's the freshest it could potentially be if that they come out every Tuesday at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's no other company or person getting it faster than you if you're going to be out in line at first thing in the morning, 8 a.m. on Tuesday, week over week. And then it's just going to be a snowball momentum effect eventually.
Right. You create, with probate, it's like creating the process, because it's a long process. Sometimes it can be quick because there's not a lot of hurdles to jump. But for the most part, it's going to be longer than the average person that wants to sell the house, because the courts are involved. And so there's a little bit longer of, from a point A, not to point B, but from point A to point F. We got to jump through these three things. Well, the person like hurdles, the faster we can jump through those and get to the finish line, the more efficient we are of clearing those hurdles, the better we're going to be at it, and the more consistency we're going to find. And that's really what this game's about, is finding consistency.
Yeah, man. And the key to that point right there, Scott, is knowing what hurdles can exist before other people, right? So you might not know that there's 5 hurdles, but I do. So I'm going to be able to know about that, talk intelligently about that, and bring in the right person or people to help with that. Like, I'm not a probate lawyer, but I have a really good probate attorney. Right. And I bring them in when necessary. So that's the difference right there.
Right. You like you're not a specialist.
Exactly.
One of those.
Yes.
I'm not a probate person, but I have a friend. And that friend's name is Andrew Becker. That's who I call when I get into myself into these situations. And then I took the class too. So, the value that you get out of sitting down with a professional in there, I know I was one ADHD. I did not do good in school. And now I look back at it and be like, oh, well, but if I learn the things that I really enjoy, man, I'm right there ahead of the class. And probate's one of those things that, takes a little bit of knowledge to get into. It's not something you can walk into and you're at a college level course. You need to start, with the grassroots and figure out first how to find the leads, and then how to cultivate those leads, and then have a conversation, have an educated conversation, because that's where you build trust. Yeah. And Andrew Becker with Probate Engineers is one of the best in the industry at teaching this. So feel free to find him. We're going to have links in the bio at the end of this. Also, like and share if you've come out of this with a little bit more knowledge. I hope you did. I know I do every time I talk to Andrew. And look him up. Find him, ask more questions. He's one of the most open people I know that will engage with you, to help you find success. So I hope everybody likes what they heard today about probate. Be sure to like and follow, and then chase down Andrew Becker with Probate Engineers. I hope you have a good day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.